Good evening, Thomas. How's it going?
Good evening. Well, it's a good day for you, isn't it, Timony? And I hope you're all keeping well. Note my new funky 1968 Stinks of Nicotine and Patchouli backdrop.
Love it. It's
I'm
awesome.
feeling very orange amplifier and, being about to be electrocuted by my own guitar.
Yes, that was such a good story.
What's your sign?
Take us to Funky Town.
My birth sign is Pyrex because I was a test tube baby.
Test tube baby. That's fantastic. Even more things I didn't know about you.
Yep.
Well, how is everybody in the comment section? Thank you to everybody that's showing up and saying hi and sharing. You guys are the best.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. I'm glad to be here on Facebook Live with everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Again, as always, thank you to our Patreon supporters out there. We got some things in the works for you, and it really helps out us here on the American side of Beyond Room 313, every subscription that you guys have. And Thomas, good to see you, and we're really looking forward to today's episode here.
38.
Number 38. 38 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
The more I look at this backdrop, it looks like I'm underwater and farting.
Yeah. Bubbling up. Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to hand this over to Timony.
We have a crazy windstorm going on outside. So far, it hasn't affected our internet. We ran a couple tests. Everything's fine. We've had 65-mile-an-hour gusts, sounding like the roof is going to get ripped off. So if we blow away, that's what happened. I think we're going to be all right, though.
We get 120 here. We don't even stop for making the tea.
It comes whipping down this street, though. It's like a little corridor. There's like I swear I thought it was a tornado earlier.
It's also your houses are all made of wood, ours are all made of stone. So it's much more.
Yeah.
Anything over 40 miles an hour is pretty tricky over there.
Yeah. They call this trampoline relocation weather. Yeah, that was crazy. Okay, here we go. A spooky piece of security camera footage from England shows a purportedly haunted doll seemingly moving on its own, and some suspect that a ghost child could have been playing with the toy. The weird scene reportedly unfolded last week in the town of Rotherham at the home of paranormal enthusiasts Lee and Lindsay Steer, who have turned their residence into something of a museum of haunted objects. According to the couple, the doll at the center of the eerie video had recently been sent to them by an anonymous donor who offered no insight as to why they had mailed the creepy doll to them. However, the answer to that question might be found in the footage captured by the camera in their home. Noticing that something seemed amiss with the newly acquired doll, the morning after they placed it with their collection, the Steers checked the security system that watches over their allegedly haunted objects at night, and they were astounded by what they saw. In the footage, the toy can be seen lurching forward at a series of odd motions as if it is being manipulated by an unseen force. It's like the joints are physically moving like a human. If it was a natural fall, it'd have gone to the floor, but it didn't. The way she was positioned defies gravity. Interestingly, despite being the home of an array of objects suspected of being haunted, she revealed that this footage is the first time we've caught something moving on camera at the museum, and mused that it baffled me. As one might imagine, given the nature of where the doll now lives, some have suggested that the toy caught the attention of a ghost child that was intrigued by the new addition to the collection. More skeptical viewers, of course, argue that the video is either a clever hoax or that the object's inexplicable movement was a natural event that seemed paranormal by virtue of where it happened. Yep.
Yeah, I like to take this one in the direction that we usually go in with this, is that, there are objects and things of value that entities like to attach themselves to. And I know that like the mainstream kind of paranormal point of view on things is hauntings of deceased people, that somehow people when they die hang around. And that's like that their definition of purgatory, where they don't go to heaven or hell, and kind of a Christian perspective of things. But no, I like taking more of the animist perspective, that there are other entities out there that aren't necessarily human, that need some sort of vessel to incarnate into. And if there's, if this doll once belonged to someone or was manufactured by someone, and there was enough psychic charge left in that that object, that doll, there'd be enough complexity in it for a being to inhabit it. It seems like these entities like to put themselves into objects with charge, and you can, like somebody's guitar that they've played for years and they love that guitar has more charge to it than the guitar that's sitting there at the music shop that's just been manufactured and it's up, it's hanging up and it's just like a blank slate guitar. But like, when you go and you pick up someone's guitar that's in their living room, you can just feel that energy in that instrument because it's had all that psychic charge. So I'd imagine the same thing can happen with a doll, where if this was, either handmade by someone with a tremendous amount of psychic energy or belongs to a family at one point or something like that, where there was a certain amount of charge, capacitance within it, so to speak, to use kind of a term like that it would have enough of a psychic charge in there to be perceived as valuable. That tends to be where these entities go into. Like, if they go into a service rifle, for instance, that service rifle has a lot of attachment to it, the same way someone's guitar would have an attachment to it. But that's at least from what my observations are with things like this, with, alleged hauntings. They're not the, the mainstream perspective of it being, a deceased person. It's some other type of extra dimensional entity.
Imagine a sad story, Victorian America, where all kinds of diseases kill people at an early age. A little girl, 9-year-old, dying of typhoid, holding her porcelain dolly, and the family all around her weeping as she exits this world. Imagine little girl in London in 1940 during the Blitz with the bombs falling down, holding her dolly every time she hears a bomb blowing up nearby. Imagine a little girl in Berlin, 1945, when the Russian guns are hitting the house and she's holding her dolly. There's your charge. There's your terror. There's your source of fruit for the entity. And what better place to hide inside than a dolly? So the history of that doll clearly would have something, like you were saying, Jason, connected to it. I really do believe in this stuff. It's also one of the things that parents have to be very careful with giving, in a dysfunctional home, or say there's a fact the parents are rowing. Well, normal parents would never have a row in front of their kid, but so many assholes do. But giving them dollies or a doll house, I know in some cultures doll houses are frowned upon to give to little girls because they can attract spirits, and that's why it's usually adult women who collect doll houses and do that doll house hobby thing. They're not safe for little girls. And I'd often told that famous story of the Buddhist monk who stayed up the road during the Special Olympics. And he asked the woman, to her daughter was away in college, so that's why she was able to rent a room out or provide him with a room. She still had all her little girl dollies and teddy bears. And he asked her, could she please remove them and don't be offended. In my culture, we believe that those things can contain demons. And so there you go. It's a universal thing. And that's one of the things that the iconoclast, the Presbyterian ones, are kind of were on the money. They're kind of correct about. Although it seems to be it also has to be hollow inside. It can't be like a statue that's actually solid marble or alabaster all the way through it, or metal. It has to be hollow. And that's what's going on. I've seen that video and I put the willies right up me. That stuff does scare me.
I think too that maybe a reason things like dolls and teddy bears and stuff like that are more susceptible to being taken over by these things is they're built in a way that they can move, right? Like they've got arms and legs. Jason was using the example of a guitar and stuff, but that can't really move by itself. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like an anatomy. It's an artificial anatomy, but it could still move around like that.
Yeah, well, it'd be kind of like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of a term for it, like a quantum galvanism, where that actually can move the things through a kind of a quantum thing. That would be a kind of an even more spooky kind of way of thinking about it. Well, yeah, definitely, it seems to be the hollow things that definitely attract them, like dolly houses, dolls, and this kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the boxes and things that have negative space, is that right? Inside of it, You know, like a Dybbuk box or like
a Dybbuk box. Yeah.
Or a jar made out of brass or something like that. But what Timothy was just saying about that too, it's interesting too, because if you do have an entity that, like if you would imagine probably us as a human entity, our energetic field extends out, you know, into, you know, our appendages, and you know, we have a meat suit that we carry around, but we have energetic lines that go through these limbs and everything. So I would imagine, if you have a type of entity that has once been in humanoid form or has been in bipedal form like that before, it could inhabit a doll body, so to speak, where, you know, its nervous system or its memory of a nervous system. Thank you. Memory of a nervous system could put itself into a template like that. So that's a very good point. You know,
this touches on so many other subjects, right? Well, we have golem, about the golem, right? Think about that one.
Yeah.
And think about voodoo, right? Now, one of the theories surrounding voodoo is that an entity is quantum entangled with the doll and with the person that they're trying to hurt. And the entity lives in the doll, but also then goes to the person and brings the pain and suffering into the person's body. So, like, you have to make an effigy, but the voodoo dolly is not really an effigy of the person they're trying to hurt. It's more an effigy of the demon that's going to end up in the person getting hurt. So, I mean, this is so many subjects.
And the whole concept of phantom limb syndrome, where somebody still has an astral limb, so to speak, where the physical limb has been removed, where the nervous system has been severed at that point, but they're still, you know, they still have an appendage with their astral body. We'll just use that term. Their astral body still extends down where that limb used to be, or extends out where that limb used to be. And
they get itches and everything, and there's nothing but there but empty space.
Right. Yeah, and it just shows, you know, we aren't our bodies, we aren't our nervous system. Our nervous system and all that is a communication network between ourselves and our body. But, you know, all these hardcore materialist scientism types are always trying to look for awareness or consciousness to be something that exists within the brain. Just like I think you sent over a thing for us to post of the there's a young fellow, right, who had a brain scan done, and most everything in his skull was a sack of fluid, right? Sack of water, essentially, right? Yeah, and it just shows, intelligence and awareness and consciousness aren't. Yeah, right. And it's like people always.
Famous chicken in America that had no head, and it was a major tourist thing, and the chicken lived perfectly. It didn't even eat, and yet it somehow lived a long life.
Right, and it's just like the source of intelligence and the source of awareness and the source of consciousness has something to do with the brain. But I like to use the analogy that the brain's kind of like a patch bay. Like when people talk about forming new neural pathways, it's like, it's like going up to a patch board and you're connecting, you know, different jacks into those different connections. But that doesn't mean that's the source of intelligence. That just means it's part of the body's neuroelectrical system. You know, just as much as the spine is. And people always, you know, in different cultures, there's always this spot here where people, you know, when you introduce yourself, you naturally touch yourself there below your heart. And it's like, you know, I think what the Egyptians said, the seat of the soul is there. Is that the pancreas? Am I using the right organ? My anatomy is shit today. Yeah. What'd you say, Thomas?
The solar plexus.
Solar plexus, yeah. But yeah, there might be more of a connection to our own consciousness there than there is, you know, in the brain, you know, the brain being kind of a switchboard. But yeah, this guy not even having much brain matter, except for probably a tremendous amount of electrolytes up there, I imagine, is what was in that skull.
Or the Celts believed that consciousness was in the head. The Egyptians believed it was in the solar plexus. Maybe he is an Egyptian in terms of his consciousness residing with him.
Well, and there's the other thing too that they say, you know, within your gut is your second brain. There's some sort of like cells. They're not neurons, but there's some. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah, the brain cells.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, then it is.
Yeah, and there's also a brain in your gut as well. That's where you get your gut feeling from. And there's also a brain in the spine. That's why you get that like fingering up and down your spine. Yeah, so the brain is almost like it's more like a network in many ways. And just like a network, there are compensatory routing away from places that might not be working. And that's why it's really quite remarkable and silly that the way they still go on about this stuff. And yet there's tons of evidence to prove that it's not like that at all.
Right. Or these people there, I want to say it was maybe in 2019 or 2020, they were trying to do the head transplant. I forgot what country it was in. It might've been in Russia, but they were trying to, there was someone who was terminally ill, and then like a prisoner or someone like that, they were going to decapitate the head off of that person's body and then attach the head from the person who was terminally ill onto that body. And I kept thinking like, they're going to like do this, and if it's done successfully, the dude who's on death row is going to wake up and be like, things taste a little different and look a little different. What's going on here? And they're going to accidentally have killed the dude that they're trying to put his head onto, and his body just atrophied afterwards because they didn't attach anything to it, and they let his body die because they're thinking, the brain is who you are. No, yeah.
They saved the Walt Disney's head for that purpose.
Right.
He's in the vat of liquid nitrogen somewhere.
Right. And it's like, I would imagine, there is cellular imprintation done to probably brain cells where, there might be memories or imprints of memories stored somewhere in the brain, but I imagine they're probably also stored in the hands and, things like that. Like, what if you saved, what if they saved Chuck Berry's hands or something, to for playing guitar or something like that. But yeah, it's like that thing about putting the head in, some sort of electrolytic solution and then getting it to speak. We've talked about that a couple times on the show before, something similar to like the Baghdad battery or, I don't remember where it was. I thought it was from you, Thomas, I heard, but I want to say that they preserved Ed Kelly's head afterwards. And I don't remember who I heard that from, his eyes or something. Yeah.
There's lots of people, like they have Napoleon's penis. There's lots of weird things like that. But, right. I think young Mary Shelley, when she was 19, 200 years ago, told us exactly what will happen if that dude's head is put on that guy's body in Frankenstein. It's got, there's so many inherent risks just in blood transfusion. My God, can you only imagine the risks in this?
Yeah. What does he say in there? Evil stitched to evil, because they were just going through taking cadavers of, horrible people. And then, Dr. Frankenstein put them all together in one. It's like, the risk from that is obviously what it is. But even if you're not taking, evil people, there's still, everybody comes with their own recorded stuff that's happened to them in their life, and just throw all that into a bag together and shake it up. My God.
Have you ever read the novel? It is fantastic. It is.
I read it in high school years ago. I should read it again. I actually just watched that movie the other night.
So full of atmosphere. And a 19-year-old girl who'd never written a book back 200 years ago could pump that out of her skull. It really is remarkable. Even by today's standards, it's quite powerful.
Wasn't it kind of like a competition that she was having with her friends that, they wanted to see who could write the scariest novel or something like that? It was
to tell the scariest. That happened. They were all trapped in Switzerland. Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and someone else. And they had a competition to deal with the boredom because it was the year without a winter. What happened was a volcano, I think it was in the Philippines, that covered the earth in a cloud of dust. And the sun never shone for a whole year. So it was a year out of summer. And so that's what gave birth to the Gothic movement. That was a very influential environmental event. It also created incredible red sunsets when it started to dissipate. And that's where William Turner started painting his incredible sunsets over the English countryside. And that gave birth eventually to, the Impressionists and everything else. So an ecological catastrophe, well, not catastrophe, but like glitch that lasted a year, gave birth to the Gothic Romantic movement and pre and post Impressionist painting. And it's just incredible stuff. And it just goes to show you that human beings will pull creativity out of the darkness like that. We have a remarkable capacity for that.
And I think we're heading into that now. And like you've talked about, Thomas, the upcoming Renaissance, we'll only have a Renaissance if we really go through the shit right now. Yeah. And I love to use the analogy of, it's like, the most beautiful roses come out of the worst stinking bullshit. Right. And it's like, we're going through some stinking bullshit right now. And, I think we're going to have a tremendous artistic and philosophical and technological renaissance here. Probably,
but only certain types. The ones like us, transhumanism.
Right.
only this. The transhumanists will go the way of the all these like weird movements you had, like the Luddites and stuff like that. Now I know the Luddites were anti-machine, but they didn't really have an effect in the end. I mean, right now we're the new Nietzsches and the new all those kinds of people will be coming forward. Samuel Palmer's, the William Blake. Do we need a new William Blake? You know, especially. But yeah, we're heading into those times again. No, I have no doubt about it.
It's interesting when he spoke about Luddites. It's like swinging the pendulum the other way. They're like spiritual Luddites, or spiritual Luddites. They're so against anything other than the physical. Where it's like the previous Luddites were against everything physical or mechanical. And these IFSL types, I fucking love science types are all anti anything that's not technology. You know, they would rather live as an Arduino board with some, servos connected to it. They'd rather be like that. Like I had a classmate once who talked about being in a server farm, and he said it felt like being at home to him, and it felt so natural being in a server farm. I'm just like,
well, the Luddites were against anything that wasn't an extension of the body. So a hammer was an extension of the fist. A saw or a knife was an extension of the teeth or the fingernails, that kind of thing. A bicycle was an extension of the feet. But anything that was an extension of the body, they believed was idolatry. And that was why they smashed like things like cotton mills and stuff in the north of England.
So now it's come, the pendulum has swung all the way in the opposite direction now. And the Luddites are the ones that will only do that stuff, or will only worship that stuff, so to speak. Cool.
Yep.
All right. In the coming 2 years, humanity may experience an unusual space show, the distortion of space and time. Humanity is waiting for an incredible show. In a galaxy in the constellation Boots, two black holes will merge. Such an event will cause a flash in the sky, as well as the arrival of a powerful gravitational wave, a distortion of space-time. That is, time begins to slow down or go backwards, and space will pulsate. How it looks in reality, no one knows, because this has never happened before. Gravitational waves come to Earth from time to time, but they are very weak. In the next 2 to 3 years, the Earth and mankind will experience the impact of an unprecedented cosmic event. In the galaxy, in the Boots constellation, these two black holes will merge. This most powerful catastrophic cosmic event will cause a flash in the sky and the arrival of a powerful gravitational wave. The galaxy in which the black holes will merge is 1 billion light years from the solar system. Therefore, for us, the phenomena will not be catastrophic. At the center of this distant galaxy are two black holes, one revolving around the other. Their total mass is about 800 million times greater than that of the sun, while by cosmic standards they are tiny, smaller than the size of the Earth's orbit. They get closer, then they move away. When they get close, there is a small flash. Astronomers have been watching these flares for a long time, and they have noticed that they are becoming more frequent. A few years ago, such an outbreak happened once a year. Now it's once a month, which means that the smaller black hole is rapidly approaching the larger one. As calculated by a group of astronomers, before a complete merger, the event will take place at a maximum of 1,000 days. That is, it will happen either this year or next year. We will witness a flash in the sky, hardly very bright. Normally, this galaxy is not visible to the naked eye. One can only speculate about the further consequences. The merger of black holes is the most powerful catastrophe that can only be expected in our universe.
For every cosmologist who believes in black holes, there's one to tell you they don't exist. Black holes were created to fill in the gaps in the Big Bang theory. There was regarding the loss of energy. And so they were a theoretical thing that was created about the Big Bang theory and evangelically brought into the public by Stephen Hawking. There was you could speak to many cosmologists and they'll tell you that black holes are pure bullshit. They don't exist. And these are not like, dummies. These are guys at the top of the field. And there are videos out there of Stephen Hawking having rows with, you fucking bastard. No, because Could you imagine? Sorry, imagine Stephen Hawking. Do you ever see the pictures of him on? I know I can't be serious tonight. The pictures of it, the photograph.
We need to edit that to make that do a little clip. That's so good.
The photographs of the guy on Epstein's Island. Baby, you really launched my rocket. Sorry.
No, this is good. Stephen Hawking with a vocoder.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's good.
Who's the man who
going?
The black holes? SHAFT. Yeah, but anyway.
Touch me.
And that's all I got to say about it. I don't know if these things exist. I'm out on it, and that's basically. I think a lot of people didn't challenge Stephen Hawking because he was a very disabled man, and I think they would have been afraid of being accused of being disablist. But having said that, I'm on the fence regarding the existence of black holes. They sound very romantic. They sound very spectacular, very esoteric even. But what are they? Do they even exist? Are they just finding these strange phenomena in outer space and just saying, oh, that's a black hole, and this is what it does? But they don't know really,
Right. And that's just, I want to say a lot of this too is stuff that only exists on paper. They found anomalies, and then the explanations for the anomalies, they've come up with calculations that have been done on paper, have been done on computer, so to speak. Models is the term I'm looking for, that, a lot of this stuff is purely a model. And we know we've had films, we've had Interstellar and all kinds of mythology, if you will, created around them. But yeah, again, it's I know Cliff High said that before. It's like the Big Bang is the scientism types one free miracle that they're given. They're given this one miracle within their canon of the Big Bang and entropy. And yeah, again, it could be just a reconstituting of the whole end times prophecy again. Like here's this big event.
Big Bang was invented by Jesuits and Jesuits in a Jesuit who made friends with Albert Einstein, and they both kind of agreed. And it tied the Bible and Genesis nicely into everything too, So
exactly right. So it's like they're one free miracle that they're given, that everything is based off of. There's so many models, again, based off of the Big Bang theory and based off of entropy, that eventually there will be entropy within the universe, that everything will stop expanding and all will cease. And it's again end times talk again. And but there's not enough philosophy in natural science and even physical sciences that talk enough about things being in a great cycle. That what if there never was a beginning of time? What if there never was an end? Never will be an end of time? Well, that's what
particle physics tells us, and that's what that tells us that time is purely a construct within the clock speed of our brain, and it doesn't exist. Everything is happening in the universe all together at the same time at once. And to stop us from going bonkers with this limited nervous system, our nervous system compresses it into a cyclical event. And as a result, what we experience around us is that way too. So, I mean, it's so funny. It's like quantum physics. It's amazing it hasn't been banned, because it really tears the arse out of orthodox science on so many levels, in that sense. So, but again, they make it sound so spectacular. We on this show, we're very aware of scientists fishing for grants. It could happen. We might happen. A little light in the sky, big deal. And I do love the idea. And gravitational waves, again, that's all. Here they are. Like these scientists have to come to are you a hardcore materialistic science, or are involved in orthodox theoretical physics? Or do you accept the quantum model and realize that what you're talking about could be completely wrong or just made up by you?
Right. Again, it's models. It's the same people who are using the model for the brain and everything are consider the brain to be
pandemics and everything. Yeah, that thing has now that data modeling thing is actually what's killed science. We've been talking a lot about it. Science has gone nowhere. One of the reasons is because it's become a world of data.
Right. Yeah, exactly. People not being like Jack Parsons and Ed Foreman getting their hands dirty, so to speak. Like the two of them were such a dynamic duo because you had a polarity between one of them was an artist and one of them was an engineer. I guess they were both engineers, but they were two sides of the same coin, so to speak. One left brain, one right brain. But they went out there and got their hands dirty and weren't working in purely models. Well,
what about Philo Farnsworth, an American farm boy who's driving a tractor across his farm in Ohio, looks at the furrows behind him and says, that's how you would make television work. We don't have these people anymore because they don't have hands-on skills. Philo Farnsworth's invention of the scanning technology of television, the 625 and 425 lines, came directly out of looking at how the field was plowed by his tractor. They don't have these hands-on experiences. Therefore, they lack the imagination to see one thing and inspiring another. You cannot do that with data.
Right. Just like Phil Hines said in Condensed Chaos, that thing about magic and sex are the same thing. You can read about them as much in a book, but you don't know anything about it until you go out there and experience it. So like with magic, with anything, you got to go out there and do the work. You got to go out there and be willing to be a maverick, too, like you were talking about earlier on YouTube. And your show today, being a maverick and going against the orthodoxy, so to speak, and there's a tremendous amount of scientific orthodoxy now, if you can even call it scientific.
When I was a kid, we used to go visit our grandmother at a place called Carbra, and coming back home to where we lived in the car, we went over a bridge that was very steep and over a canal called Broom Bridge. And I used to always tell my dad, slow down, because when you're going into puberty, little boys, yourself, Jason, that can be your son will have this in a few years, Timothy. You can be very sensitive down there to motion. It can make you vomit and things like that. And I used to say to him, and all my brothers used to say, but don't go too fast over the bridge. I don't feel right after it. I don't feel right when it happens. And so it was an early experience in the laws of thermodynamics and motion, right? And the laws of motion. But get this now. It went over a canal, this Broom Bridge, that wasn't far from a very old classical observatory called Dunsink. And under the bridge, years later, I was walking underneath it, and it's beautiful. It's like the countryside in the middle of the city. There was some equation written on the wall, and it turns out that it was it's called a quaternarian equation, and an astronomer was walking along the canal one day minding his own business, and this equation, which is central to astronomy and particle physics to today, came into his head just as a eureka moment, looking at nature. And that's why it's carved on the inside of the bridge to celebrate where it happened. But it's funny that, you talk about synchronicities. Here was I, as a little boy, being physically affected by this bridge. And also it was considered a very haunted place. At night, people wouldn't go down there. And yet, because it was in a kind of a wasteland, in the middle of the urban, wasteland, but an empty area in the middle of an urban area. And there underneath the bridge from 200 years ago was this carving of this quaternarian equation. So, it was one of those early things in life that all these kinds of things came together. Like my experience of learning what the laws of motion were above an equation and on the same bridge it was underneath. This kind of weird stuff, that happened by an accident of a moment of eureka down beside an old observatory. And I had developed an interest in astronomy as a kid very early on, not knowing this existed. So there's almost a sense of destiny to your life when you start looking back at these things and realize it was almost like the universe was pausing me at that bridge for a reason.
Now, Thomas, you're saying with that bridge going over it, there's a little bit of a gravitational anomaly that you can perceive in your physiology. Is that what you were saying?
No, well, yeah. Little boys, when you're on a roller coaster when you're about 11, your testicles could really hurt you and stuff.
Yeah.
And it would
that experience,
that experience. But
yeah, I had a similar experience.
It was very powerful because I associated it with a real discomfort, and yet it was to become central to so many things in my life I'm interested in to this day.
Yeah, I know that sensation you're talking about from at a very young age. Yeah. And I almost now would almost equate it as a kind of like a Kundalini experience that some people might call it. Where it's like,
that's exactly what it is. It's a very strange, your son will explain to you at some point, it'll happen to you, Timothy, when you're going over a bridge or on a roller coaster, something like that. and it comes out of nowhere. And that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like there's a weird energy moving up your spine, and from down in your down below in your testicles, and it's very unsettling emotionally and psychologically as much as it is physical. That's the weird thing about it.
Yeah, my parents both watched this show, and you both will know what I'm talking about when we're drive over to Oxnard. There was I think it was on Victoria. There's this one place near the landfill, surprisingly, where there was a dip in the road. We'd be going along, and I think the speed limit was 50 miles an hour, and the car would do one of these, and there was that gravitational anomaly there that would give that discomfort to me. And I was probably somewhere around between 7 and 10 years old, and Mom and Dad, you'll know what I'm talking about there. They always could not figure out what I was talking about. But when you said that, I'm like, no, I know exactly what you mean, Thomas. And I want to say that was probably my first Kundalini experience, was around that age.
Keep talking. I want to look for something.
Yeah. But no, I know, Mom, I think you're watching the show right now. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. And I know, Dad, you're going to be watching this on the playback in a few days when it shows up on your iPad. But yeah, they're on Victoria when we'd go to work, where Dad worked, up the road. There's just that gravitational anomaly there I think it was at Victoria, and I forgot the cross street, but right there next to the two landfills on either side of the road. So when, Thomas, you said that, I just wanted to make sure you're talking about the same thing. But it's been 30 years or so for me since I had that first experience, and I didn't know how to describe it. My ability to use language at that point in my life, I wasn't able to say that. Yeah, there's this tremendous energy there in that part of my body, and with the way that gravity affected it, and that nauseous feeling afterwards that you're talking about. So yeah, that's just real interesting that you'd bring that up, Thomas. But I'm
sending you a picture of the bridge, so you know what it looked like, and also the equation I think I'm sending it to as well on the wall inside it. Just to give you an idea, this bridge is hundreds of years old now, but it's just, I will never forget the experience. I will never forget the like you said, what you were just saying. It wasn't just a physical discomfort. There was an emotional and a psychological reaction that was very apparent. Yeah. And the bridge was made for horse and carts. So it was like this. It wasn't made for cars going over 30, 40 miles an hour, because that was like it would start to get hutched. If you went any faster, the car would take off. There's the equation, and the wording is very interesting. I think it talks about a flash of inspiration. And that's a classic Luciferian moment, when you have that flash of insight. Yeah. A
flash of light, but no starting pistol.
Yeah, there you go.
Lyric. Yeah, I love that lyric in that song. Yeah,
the elusive language, and I also sent you the bridge as well, and you can see what that looked like.
Okay, let me pull up the bridge. Oh, there it is.
1843. Yeah. So William Rowan, that was the guy who discovered the equation, walking under a bridge. So it kind of like tied me at a very early age into the sort of like quantum world as it was developed before quantum physics. And there's the bridge. You can see it's ancient,
Yeah.
And my grandmother lived where the green building is on the right, and so this area at night, it's not so bad now because it's been like made of cycle parks and everything. And there's a train track here under the first arch, and then you can see the canal there. But it was that bridge there. Yeah. It was that bridge, and that bridge seemed to be almost like a portal as well, because there was lots of paranormal events reported. When my dad was like a teenager, you wouldn't go over that bridge, and and it's urban on either side of it, but it was just like there was stories of banshees and ghosts and everything around there.
Yep, and I can see with this, if you were going over that at 30, 40 miles an hour, that would what's that? It's 90 kilometers per hour over there. It wasn't made for cars; it was built for horse and carriages, things. But just that dip there, you can see going down on the other side of that. Yeah, everything would lift up in your body a little bit like that, and that would be a tremendously uncomfortable thing for male anatomy.
Yeah, especially little boys.
Right. So that's so interesting.
A bit of my childhood history, but it just goes to show you, it ties in with so many things I got interested in.
Right. Huh. Well, that's not something I've thought about for decades now, but thanks for bringing that up, Thomas.
That's weird, isn't it? It's one of those things. Well, you kind of want to forget it because it left you kind of, I don't like the sensation.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I know. Yeah, my folks will attest to that. I know mom and dad, you're going to listen to this eventually. Yeah, we're talking about black holes, but no, this is great. I mean, when we're talking about, hold on, I got to get, I'm trying to do too many windows on the screen right now. There we are again. Yeah, but no, tying this thing back into to quantum physics and everything, we're talking about, even going back to that first story about consciousness and everything, but, young people having these Kundalini experiences, you're igniting. I want to say when you have that thing where from your root chakra, when it somehow lights up at the lower part of your body and shoots up into your pineal gland like that, you're going in between dimensions. You're going outside of this physical reality. And, all these scientism types looking at black holes and everything, it's like they're trying to explain that outside of themselves somehow. It's like they might have this theory about black holes, but they've put it again, like everybody does, where they put the gods in the sky, or they put a god in the sky. Everything is outside of themselves at that point again. So all these people with the black holes and the models, it's like they're taking something that exists within already, exists within, and mocking it up outside. Again, they're still doing the same thing again, where they're taking something that's a human experience and then putting it outside of themselves, right? Yeah. So,
but there we go. That's my thing on the whole thing. I haven't had enough proof that black holes exist, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But quantum cosmologists certainly are not agreed on the subject, not at all.
Well, that makes me a little sad. I want them to be real so bad.
Well, they could be. It's just there's two factions out there. That's all.
I think the cool thing about it too is there is something in space that's more interesting than the scientific people types that talk about these black holes. I want to say there are probably, to use the term, like wormholes within space, where there might be points where space folds over on itself. There might be places on the Earth or places on Mars, places on planets where,
the fairy rings that people walking through the stone circle,
right.
5 hours later on the other side.
And the experience we had in Skamania.
I can't explain why the 5 hours went.
Right. And it's like we had our experience in Skamania when we were filming Sasquatch, where we were looking for that rock, which was 10 minutes away from the Airbnb, and we drove around for hours trying to find it. And there's these time slips and everything. So I want to say, like, their model of a black hole, they say it's a very specific thing, but there's stuff like this all over the place. And we were talking about on the previous show, or maybe it was a week or two ago, with the airport where they dug up something, and you're saying that maybe they could be going into a different realm entirely, looking at the Thomas, you're talking about, opening up an entirely different realm, kind of like the fairy stray type of thing. So these black holes and this space mysticism, I tried to coin the term recently, the space paganism, with people like Jack Parsons and Ed Foreman. But there's a tremendous amount of mysticism with space. And I want to say the whole black hole thing and the whole Big Bang thing and all that, again, is something trying to explain something very natural by putting it out there outside of ourselves somewhere. And there's something way cooler, I think, than the mainstream agreed upon reality of what a black hole is, with it being something where there's just tremendous amount of, where there's a bit of star that's what collapsed in on itself and created such a tremendous amount of mass, right? And that distorts time around it. I still do wonder if even that, the theory of relativity, that the concept of time being distorted through gravity is even bullshit, because we're still talking about, earlier you mentioned, Thomas, how time is, there's just one constant now, no matter where you are. Now is always the one constant we have. There's one moment, and the entropic nature of our body and our nervous system is the one thing that changes. So I would venture to say that the theory of relativity and all that could be total bullshit, that gravity could affect time in some way.
And I feel bad now because I took the romance of cosmology away from Timony, but I shall return it to you with this statement. Not only do I believe that, like Jason said, that space is mystical, I believe that space travel itself is part of the psychedelic experience more than it has to do with science. That's what I believe. So if that space is where the psychedelics, the going in a spaceship and leaving the Earth, say going out towards the moon, is the same thing as dropping a load of acid. And the Russians and even the Soviets even kind of suspected this when they invented, at the height of communism, they came up with cosmism, the belief that our dead ancestors existed on planets and on stars in deep space and could be reached by space travel. And space travel, that was the thing. There were atheists on. This is a fascinating subject. I don't know we're talking about it all night, but the cosmists believe that there was no God and atheism on this planet, but in space is where mysticism, magic, and spirituality existed. So how about that one?
I love it. And then, the Dogon, and, people who would go into trance states, not even needing any substances, and could go out there and travel through space. And just the idea too, I don't remember who it was, but someone talks about there being some sort of portal near Orion's belt, that's where some entities have come into this particular corner of the universe through, that there's somehow a Stargate, whatever you want to call it there, for lack of better terms.
Pyramids are, both Mexico and Egypt are very similar to the belt.
Yep. And my ass, no matter where I am on the planet, I can find Orion's belt if it's out there. I can just immediately look up in the sky and my eyes directly go to Orion's belt. And so if I came in here through somewhere. And
the whole constellation is seen clearly in both hemispheres.
Right. So I want to say, there's so much tremendously cool space paganism, space mysticism out there that we're just now, people like us are getting into this. And, it'll be people who maybe have a little more money or more, I should say maybe more resources will be able to look into this. People that are going to be listening to our show over the decades will go back to these early episodes and get a great idea from this and go, oh, you know what, we can do something with this, and then pour a bunch of money and resources into some kind of research about this.
They'll put an equation under a bridge.
They'll put an equation under a bridge, and then some kid will drive over it someday and have a Kundalini experience and mock it up.
There you go.
All right, I feel a little bit better now. Don't take space from me. Just kidding. Okay. Who sings on top of a mountain in the USA? The unexplained acoustic impact of Mount Roan on the human brain. In the southeastern United States, there is a place where acoustic anomalies have been occurring for thousands of years, affecting the human brain so that people begin to see strange shapes. This is the territory of Mount Roan, a highland range which is part of the mountain system of the ancient Appalachians. The history of these places goes back to the distant millennia where Native Americans still lived here. It was they who were the first eyewitnesses of the mysterious singing in the mountains. About 2,000 years ago, Indian shamans reported that a deity from another world lives on Mount Roan. His messengers warned travelers with their singing when they approached the sacred place. The voices in the mountains of Roan are reminiscent of the story of Odysseus, who asked to be tied to the mast as the galley approached the island of the Sirens. Only the Sirens, with their sweet singing, aroused the unbridled desire of the sailors to jump overboard and reunite with the singers. But instead of voluptuousness, they devoured the poor fellow. Similarly, the local Indians, out of fear, rarely climbed the indicated hill. Of course, modern scientists do not believe in the existence of any deities and entities from other worlds, but they have not been able to explain the nature of singing so far. Attempts to attribute everything to the bizarre interaction of wind, rocks, and echoes have not been successful. Moreover, our audio recordings recorded in these parts have been studied at various institutes. It turns out that people can produce them, only their vocal cords should be 2 to 3 times longer, and there are no breath stops or any fluctuations in the timbre level in the singing. In the 19th century, an expedition of researchers was organized to Mount Roan. They described the events that happened to them in the following lines. We never managed to climb to the top. As we approached the indicated point, we began to hear the playing of the harp and the sonorous singing of low voices. It was not like the howl of the wind or the cry of animals and birds. We heard the choir, but could not understand who was making these divine sounds. If I were a believer today, I would believe in the existence of angels. The detachment stopped approximately in the middle of the way to the top of Mount Roan. Here, dense forests are replaced by open glades. Suddenly, we heard singing. Surprisingly, literally everything sang there. The sound came from all directions. It didn't increase or subside. It was great. To establish the source of the singing, we decided to set up camp and spend the night, and in the morning, climb even higher. They did not manage to rise above. All night, they listened to the singing, spellbound, as if it did not let them fall asleep. Closer to the morning, the expedition members saw bright silhouettes of people. Fearing for their sanity, the explorers hastily left the mountain and returned to London. Throughout the 20th century, tens of thousands of people visited this place. Many heard the mysterious singing, and it was also repeatedly possible to record it. In 2001, there was a severe storm on the top of Mount Roan. During gusts of wind, the sonorous singing did not stop, but became unbearably loud. The locals, the heirs of the Indians, believe that it is the spirits of the earth that are waging their war with the spirits of the wind. In 2012, a group of 30 students went to the foot of the mountain to hear the divine choir in person. A day later, all 30 of them complained of a severe headache, as well as visual hallucinations in the form of bright silhouettes scurrying among the trees. This effect on the human brain is a frequent occurrence among those who have visited Mount Roan. With prolonged exposure to such a sound on the brain, the perception centers are reprogrammed, which leads to visual hallucinations, as well as an altered awareness of tastes and smells. So in 2014, the subjects were taken to the mountain where they spent about a day. After that, they were given to sniff various flavors. They perceived the smell of vanilla as raw turkey and the smell of Coca-Cola as the smell of tar. The same was true for taste buds. Sour limes were eaten with great pleasure, while canned corn was refused because of an incredible bitterness. The phenomenon of Mount Roan has not yet been solved. It is unlikely that the earth or wind spirits will affect the human brain, but the fact that some acoustic waves simply reprogram the work of the centers of perception and attitude is proven. By the way, after 6 to 8 hours, the scent and taste buds of people were already working adequately. Thus, it is worth noting that nature has once again proved to mankind that there are still many unexplored mysteries on our planet.
Fantastic. What a story.
This is my favorite story I think we've done in a while. I'm mind blown. I want to go.
I've never heard of this effect. Well, the first thing I kind of think of is fairies, and fairy singing. And it almost reminds me of the sound. The way to describe it reminds me of the elvish lamentations for the leaving of Middle-earth, or for the death of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. It reminds me of that. But wow, that's just, then you think, okay, maybe it's some kind of geomagnetic effect caused by the mountain, but this sounds like in a whole new other league of stuff. This is simply incredible. I'm stunned by it. It's like a performance that's being put on for the individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you, just reading it, I don't even really know how to describe it, but just reading that story out loud kind of shifted my perceptions a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and it seems like very theatrical or something. Like it's you're getting a show. In fact, I was reading there that's what Tolkien believed about the fairy world. That when you went to, people always describe when they go into the fairy world, that they would witness a fairy battle, fairies getting ready to go to war, fairies dancing, a fairy party, a fairy pageant. And he surmised that the fairies were actually putting this performance on for humans to entertain themselves. So they weren't actually seeing a fairy battle. You were seeing a play or a piece of theater. And funny enough, a lot of alien abduction folks often report that, like, what they witness inside these abduction events, that the entities are putting on, the Greys are putting on a show for them. That's the impression they always get. And that's what this reminds me of too as well. It has that kind of like something is giving you a performance.
Yeah, I like this too with, we were just talking about, it was last week with the pyramid and the anomaly there with Quetzalcoatl, the when people would clap in front of the pyramid, it produces sound echoing off of it that they still can't figure out how that's being caused by the steps on that pyramid. And, they're still, we were talking about a few weeks ago too, there in, is it in New York, is it at one of the train stations where you can whisper in one corner of it and the sound carries over the archway into another corner and you can have a conversation with someone on the other side. So it's like there's always Grand Central. Thank you.
I don't know if you've ever been to Grand Central Station, but it's like a temple. The ceiling has a zodiac painted onto the ceiling. It's incredible. It
upside down, right? As
zodiac, yeah.
Yeah, as if you're looking at it from.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're in, and you're in there and you're looking up. It's a temple. Grand Central Station is a temple. It's not just a station.
Right. So it makes me think just too with the tremendous psycho-spiritual effect music can have on people. Sound, not just sound, but the tremendous effects that music can have on people. And then, we're talking about this story here where it's like, I would imagine you can reprogram someone's psyche through music, through, if you've ever experienced a really amazing pipe organ experience when they've got the 64-foot stops, that really low bass that just rattles you from your bowels. It's not even, it's down there at like the sub 20 hertz range where there's these gigantic, organ pedals that, just resonate your entire body. And the fact that they were talking about this, switched up people's, sensory perceptions, and thinking about this and going back to one of the stories we had recently, that was at the where the people all had the that thing happen where their heart stopped at that concert. It kind of reminds me of that too. Like what was it? It wasn't Firefest. I keep wanting to call it Firefest, but Astro World a couple of months ago, where all these people started having, I don't know if that had anything to do with the needlecraft or something, but I would imagine like, if somebody's next to a gigantic set of subwoofers where they're playing over 95 dB at a show, and you're cranking out that much sound, you could do some damage to someone's body if they've had any kind of, effects from the needlecraft occur to them. But again, it's just fascinating what effects sound and music can have on a psycho-spiritual level of people. Being a musician, a composer, that's what draws me to playing music. That's what draws me to composing music. I do it not just for, the sport of it, so to speak. I do it because that tremendous psycho-spiritual effect that it has on me, that it always has had on me, and being able to reproduce that somehow. So this story hits home to me. And, you talked about, the fairy realm and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, why do they call it music? Because, there's the muses. It's the voice of the muse, the voice of something otherworldly coming through the composer, coming through the artist. As a composer, I'm really a conduit. I hear something that I'm just capturing it and sketching it down the way you would as a visual artist, looking out at a landscape. You've got your charcoals there, and you're just trying to get it all down and reproduce it as best as possible. The hearing of a musical instrument you never heard before for the first time can be like a psychedelic experience. There was a movie that Peter Weir, the Australian director, made in the early 70s called Picnic at Hanging Rock. It's an absolutely beautiful film. It's a semi-esoteric film about a bunch of schoolgirls who go missing at this Aboriginal holy place. But what's so integral to the power of that movie is the soundtrack is all panpipes played by Zamfir. And most people, when they went to see that movie in the cinema, had never heard panpipes before. And it was the use of panpipes in the soundtrack is what fused that film into their consciousness. And people came away feeling very affected by that movie. Okay, it was just a very strange story about these girls vanishing into thin air at an Aboriginal holy place in Australia in the 1800s. But that soundtrack from that film always stuck with people. Anyone I know saw that. I didn't see it in the cinema. I was too young. I saw it years later on TV. But I can remember people telling me they saw it in the cinema, and people in Ireland had never heard panpipes. And Irish people are very sensitive to music anyway. And they said that it was like they were just, that sound was just swirling around in their skull and making them feel very strange for days later. So that's the thing. When you hear a musical instrument or sound you never heard before, I'm not surprised it affects their taste buds, because it does affect your consciousness. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, that's why, especially I want to say, I wasn't alive very long back then, but in the 1980s when I was real young, hearing recordings of analog synthesizers, there's something tremendously organic about synthesizer music from that era and going forward a little bit. I know it got tremendously overdone in certain ways, but there is something that a lot of people just find incredibly attractive with a lot of those analog synths. There's something incredible about them, and it was in the era before they started trying to do the Rompler thing where they would record like the sound of a trumpet and play it back on the keyboard, or they were trying to go, you can make strings by layering a bunch of different pulse waves. It's like, no, back when they were using just sawtooth waves, triangle waves, pulse waves, and using those as the prima materia for synthesis, when it was like, no, you're creating an archetypal sound that a saw wave has. It does sound kind of brassy, but it was before they were trying to make synthesizers sound like trumpets and strings and shit, that there was this tremendous ability that, these were sounds that people had never heard before. And I've always been really attracted to those sounds. And obviously you guys hear me using stuff like that in the music here for Beyond Room 313.
Well, I was playing music in that period, and I have a very distinct, almost psychedelic experience of the first time I programmed a Roland 808 drum machine, which is digital, by the way.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I will never forget that stayed with me all these years later, of that red light going, showing the tempo as it runs across the top, and then hit boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, and you actually have to hit along that timeline, and that's where the tempo was set. And I'll tell you, to this day, I can actually listen to a record and go, Roland 808.
808. Yep. 808s, 909s. Yeah.
Even though it's just boom, boom, that tom sound, that distinct boom, 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 that it has. Nothing else ever had that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the hi-hats on the 909. I know that they're a sample of some actual hi-hats, but 909 hi-hats, you can hear them anywhere. But yeah, no, those 808s, that's awesome that you got to play with one. And I want to say, I think there is an analog oscillator on there for each voice. It's just it's a DCO rather than a VCO, so it's not voltage controlled. It's digitally.
I wouldn't know, but I can tell you, it sounds very organic.
Yeah, because I think it actually. Yeah.
It's not like it's like something from it's like an electric guitar that has that vibe to it. But honestly, it was the first time I ever used MIDI, and it was the first time I ever hooked that with those 5-pin plugs into a sequencer, and then I would play along on the keyboard, and then on a certain bang, it would start the keyboard playing automatically. I thought I was like, Dr. Frankenstein. Yeah, amazing technology, because only a few years earlier, when I was like 14, 15, 16. The Electro-Harmonics Memory Man was the height of technology.
Right.
And also, that's the reason why U2 were so successful, was because the Edge used the Electro-Harmonics Memory Man in the guitar playing. And he compensated for his lack of technical ability by using the echo, and created a whole sound. And I think that's a huge reason why that band became successful.
Absolutely. That sound. Yeah. Just that sound of that delay pedal. Yeah. That's, I love it. But that's really cool. You got to play with that 808 back in the day, and
they were very expensive. I think they were, we chipped in between the four of us, it was $2,000. And, it was that was huge money. We were like 19, and that was like 87 or something like that. Yeah. It was already been around a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pick one up from that era now for $12,000-$15,000 probably. So,
don't tell me about. I sold my Kramer guitar, the aluminium. It's worth thousands now, and I sold it for $200.
Yeah, all that old gear. I know. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So just this mountain, I would love to go there. I want to go there. I want to hear this sound, especially when they're talking about the vocal cords needing to be twice as long as what human vocal cords are to create sounds like that. I love those deep subharmonic voice, like the Russian bass singing. If you all want to go over to YouTube and look at something cool, you can go check out Russian bass, and it's where they're able to get the male vocal cords can drop down on an octave, and you have to do it in a space that has enough resonance in it. Like we couldn't do it down here in the basement, but you need to go into a hall, and once the Russian bass singers can get those low below bass clef, below the bottom line on bass clef, like C's, B flats, and A's down there, it's incredible. But yeah, all that low bassing, and I put a lot of that. It was my voice pitched down, but I did a lot of that in the Liber Velocity soundtrack, just digitally, taking my voice right here and then dropping it down an octave below. But I love shit like that. So the mountain, like what Timothy just said, proves that nature can do it better, and has been doing it better than any of us. Yeah, that's a place I definitely would love to visit. Jesus Christ, could you imagine camping out there? Especially what you're saying about on a windy day.
Bitter lemons tasted like really delicious, and corn tasted foul. I find that fascinating.
What was it? Vanilla smelled like cooked turkey.
Wow, everything just flipped.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm really excited to see what you're going to give us for the psychic weather.
Okay.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Well, this week's psychic weather is two parts, really. So there's two different topics involved. I can't really say they're connected, but maybe they are. But the first one is the coagulation of polarities. There seems to be definitely a coagulation of archetypes, both on the good, the benevolent, and the malevolent side. And there seems to be a grouping of personality types where the decent people are all grouping and doing things, and the dark and the mad people and the pathological are doing the same. So what this tells me is, it's very clear that with these coagulations of polarities is to choose very, very wisely. If you're being pulled into something that has a creative force, that's actually something good, like starting a band or helping an old lady whose house burned down or fix it up or something like that, that's to get involved. If you see a coagulation of polarities where wickedness, nastiness, ganging up, bullying on people begins, stay well away from that. This is one of these kind of threshold moments of consciousness building. As these coagulating polarities happen, you must very much choose very, very wisely, because one will grow your soul, helping to fix up the old lady's house, starting a creative project, and one will profane your soul, getting involved in bullying, picking on negative things, just bitching. A group who wants to bitch about something, stay away from them, and nothing else, not just darkness. You know, even if they're nice people and all they want to do is bitch about a certain thing, stay away from that. So coagulation of polarities, be very careful, they're happening right now. The second one is magic is very accessible right now. And the reason for that is synchronicities are flying. Whenever synchronicities, and I've had the most unbelievable ones in the last 3 or 4 days, whenever synchronicities are flying, that means that the reality is becoming flexible and malleable, and we can play with it. That's what you're being told when you see synchronicities. You can play with the building blocks of the universe. So magic in all its forms, not just only ritual magic and, occultic magic, but the creation of music, the creation of art, writing, painting, designing stuff. This is the time to go for it. So, and that's probably why there's a coagulation of polarities. They may be linked in this sense that if magic is becoming accessible through recognition of repetitive synchronicities or extremely amazing synchronicities, that these polarities may be designed to wisen you up. So instead of getting pulled into a pathological coagulation on one polarity, or maybe too much involved in the good one, perhaps you're being told to take the middle path as yourself and create. And that's the week in psychic weather this week.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The week in psychic weather.
Hell yeah. That's what's up. That was terrific. Phenomenal. Thank you.
So get magic on your ass.
Yeah, and I like what you said, Thomas, about whether it's the art of ritual magic, ceremonial magic, or the creation of music. And it's like having dove into both of those worlds a little bit, I can just see how, like, when looking at ceremonial and looking at ritual, it's a those are ceremonial ritual magic are like an outside of yourself physical mock-up of something that the artist, the musician, the painter knows, like, innately. Like you've used the term before, like an instinctual magician, when you speak of Richard Wagner and people that have this ability innately. And it's almost like ritual and initiatory orders were designed for people who maybe weren't born into the arts as a painter, as a composer, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a whatever, yeah.
And not everyone can be Prince. Not everyone can be Jimmy.
Right. And it's right. So it's like you can use ceremonial to put that stuff outside on the table, so to speak, and use something outside to look at.
And also, magic can be in science too, as well. Like that story about the bridge earlier on, and your man, the astronomer, coming up with the flash of insight of the quaternary equation on the bridge. That was an act of magic, and that came from a time when you didn't have science; you had natural philosophy, And you all know me, I'm a big proponent of going back to natural philosophy, because I think that's where science has lost its way. This hard reduction, never the twain shall meet between science and spirituality, has actually damaged science very, very badly. And that's because there's pathological forces controlling the scientific world, and has been for about 40 or 50 years. And I think I'm a great believer in the natural philosophy thing coming back, because that's the only way we'll start creating new inventions again.
Right. And there won't be people going to what we consider now college and university for a degree in natural philosophy. It's like people will be, Tim and his son's age will be watching our shows here in a few years and watching YouTube and reading books, by self-published authors, and looking at this information and going, and just having those Lucifer moments like you're talking about, that spark of inspiration, that spark of internal light that switches something on and gets people doing independent research. Because it's, in academia nowadays, in the university setting and the college setting, all these folks are learning by rote and repetition to just repeat propaganda, repeat things that are just entirely relevant in any sort of paradigm other than the education paradigm itself. So people who start studying natural philosophy are going to be the folks who don't go to college. They're going to be the ones who might, be homeschooled or drop out of college or drop out of school and go, this is such bullshit. They're going to know, and they're going to be brilliant minds who aren't, schooled. They're not educated, but they're going to be, people with incredible amounts of incredibly high intelligence levels, who are going to be able to look at a video like this, or read one of your books, or read, Nietzsche or something you were talking about earlier, Thomas, and then be able to have these, put these puzzle pieces together in their own psyche and do something with it, is what I'm getting at. They're going to be the doers. I feel like that's what we need. And like you sent another thing to us of like the scientists today who, like, they're not the Jack Parsons types anymore. What were they making? They made some silly device yesterday. You sent that to us last night, Thomas. Like, there were two guys. They made some kind of stupid device. What was it? Like something
shoes that laced themselves.
Right. Shoes that laced themselves. It's like bullshit like that. Like, the doers out there that are trying to, even some of, I always knock on the tech industry a lot, but some of these developers and tech people, the kind of software integrations they're trying to make it's like, no, they're going in such a wrong direction for things. But yeah, we'll let them. They'll become so obscure and irrelevant, and the rest of us are going to be going along and creating this next renaissance that's coming here. And they're
years ago, I was some woman that I was working with in an office. She was like some yuppie. She was trying to impress me with how clever she was. She gave me like a compendium of philosophical essays about the various philosophers, and in the foreword, the guy, whoever had put this collection together for Penguin or whoever it was. In the foreword, it said, the Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, and the Babylonians were very religious societies and therefore achieved nothing. And I was like, hold on a second. That was the first paragraph. And about the pyramids, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Right.
They were building tunnels under the Euphrates River 5,000 years ago. The Greeks, Archimedes, Pythagoras, what?
Yep, right.
And I was like, what is that? And then they said the philosophy was designed as a way to have creative thought and understand the meaning of everything outside the domain of religion, which was holding everybody backwards. So basically, the pyramids didn't get built, the Parthenon didn't get built, and the Babylonians didn't invent their irrigation systems because they were backward. And that to me was like, it summed up that change when the real hardcore atheists were starting to come in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll still say that was all by design. That was all something, a psychological operation designed to do that, to take spirituality, we'll use that term, and put it into something very, very uncool, something very, keep people looking outside of themselves for the answers rather than being able to reflect on the inward. But yeah, just all this study and everything, Thomas, I just want to say I love all your videos where you start talking about history and start talking about especially military history, like when you're talking about the tanks and everything earlier. I just love when you go on about that, because in school a lot of our generation, you were talking about millennials earlier, as a lot of our generation, we couldn't give a fuck about the way that history was being taught to us. And a lot of it had to do with the age, but it's like me now as a 36-year-old listening to you talk about military history. I'm like, oh, this fascinates me.
Well, it was the same. It was the same with my generation. I didn't really enjoy history in school either. But what happened, what was good about back then was there was tremendous documentaries on television that were very well made, and having access to them really helped. And also it was learning, like I really like tanks. I'm fascinated by tanks. And why I'm interested in tanks was so simple, from building plastic model kits. Because you'd build the plastic model kit of a Sherman tank or a Churchill tank or a Pershing tank or a Panzer. And there would always be a leaflet inside saying this is when the tank was built and how it was used. So, this is the thing. You built the model, a scale model of it in plastic, very cheap, and inside was information about it. And then they say something like, the Pershing was first introduced in the battle of, the Operation Market Garden. That's a very strange name for a battle. And then you look that up. Now, you don't have people like that anymore. It's like Lego, right? Rant time, folks. It's like Lego. When I was a kid, Lego was just bricks in the boxes, different shapes, and it was up to you to build anything you wanted. Then in the late 70s, because they started to bring out the Star Wars Lego kits, and there were kits, and on the box was what you build inside it. So you didn't go on a journey. Now, some kids would obviously still do build whatever they want from the bricks, but the whole thing was to complete the kit as it looks on the box, right? I think that was a huge departure in Western intelligence, because every kid in Lego is the most popular toy in the world, right? Every kid has played with Lego, right? And Lego is a Danish word that means play well. And the whole idea of Lego was, it was like a box of paints. Here's your paints and your brushes, create. Here's a box of shapes that click together and colors, create. And when Lego went from that to, here's the picture of the kit on the box, you have to build this exactly, that's when Lego went downhill. And that's when creativity really went downhill. And, centuries to come, people will be saying that, they'll be saying a huge part of the certain growth in technology happened from kids playing Lego and building plastic kits. I'm convinced.
Right. And it's so interesting you talk about like a Star Wars aspect of it, because like those guys doing the design for the sets for Star Wars, they were kit bashing. They were taking Lego kits plastic model kits like battleships and airplanes and cars and X-Acto knives, and cutting little pieces out of all those and making all the Star Wars devices. Like those guys were actually tremendously creative. I'm sure you've heard that term before, kit bashing, right?
I used to always do that and still do that. And I'll tell you something else. I had a friend when I was younger, when I was about 7 or 8, called Cormac Maloney. And there was a TV show that was very popular from America and Ireland at the time called Land of the Giants, where these people shrunk into a little spaceship and went to fly around in a world where everyone was huge and they were tiny. But we made the spaceship out of a plastic little girl's tea set. And the plate, we melted it over the gas cooker, and then drew and created. And this model was perfect. It looked like the one on a TV show. It was made from cereal boxes and a plastic plate from a little girl's dinner server set, tea set, and tea party set. And I mean, you wouldn't believe the satisfaction that gave us building that. It was just incredible. Now, when you go to like Forbidden Planet today, all the kits are completed. You want to, when I was growing up, if you wanted the Enterprise from Star Trek, you had to build it from a kit. Now you go out, it's already built and painted by some Chinese sweatshop, and it's like, there you go. It's just purely for display. There's no magic, no wonder in building. Learning how to use X-Acto knives, learning how to use different kinds of glue, that kind of thing. These were real skills that served me all through my life.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's purely for display, just like so much of today's society is purely just for that surface visual. Like there's nothing about, like somebody just mentioned PhD in the comments. It's like the only, there's so many people with PhDs out there. It's just they just have their name on a certificate on the wall. It's just for display.
Piled higher and deeper.
Yeah, piled higher and deeper. That's right. That's what it stands for. So
that's awesome. Piled higher and deeper. I saw somebody over in the comment ask me if I have a YouTube channel. I don't. I'm not nearly interesting enough to do this by myself without these guys. So thank you for asking, though. That was really sweet. Okay. Researchers made a new message for extraterrestrials. Upon discovering the existence of intelligent life beyond Earth, the first question we are most likely to ask is how can we communicate? As we approach the 50th anniversary of the 1974 Arecibo Message, humanity's first attempt to send out a missive capable of being understood by extraterrestrial intelligence, the question feels more urgent than ever. Advances in remote sensing technologies have revealed that the vast majority of stars in our galaxy host planets and that many of these exoplanets appear capable of hosting liquid water on their surface, a prerequisite for life as we know it. The odds that at least one of these billions of planets has produced intelligent life seems favorable enough to spend time figuring out how to say hello. In early March, an international team of researchers led by Jonathan Yang of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory posted a paper on the preprint server that detailed a new design for a message intended for extraterrestrial recipients. The 13-page epistle, referred to as the Beacon of the Galaxy, is meant to be a basic introduction to mathematics, chemistry, and biology that draws heavily on the design of the Arecibo Message and other past attempts at contacting extraterrestrials. The researchers included a detailed plan for the best time of year to broadcast the message and proposed a dense ring of stars near the center of our galaxy as a promising destination. Importantly, the transmission also features a freshly designed return address that will help any alien listeners pinpoint our location in the galaxy so they can hopefully kick off an interstellar conversation. Probably not a good idea. The motivation for the design was to deliver the maximum amount of information about our society and the human species in the minimal amount of message. With improvements in digital technology, we can do much better than the Arecibo Message did in 1974. Every interstellar message must address two fundamental questions: what to say and how to say it. Nearly all the messages that humans have broadcast into space so far start by establishing common ground with a basic lesson in science and mathematics, two topics that are presumably familiar to both ourselves and extraterrestrials. If a civilization beyond our planet is capable of building a radio telescope to receive our message, it probably knows a thing or two about physics. A far messier question is how to encode these concepts into the communique. Human languages are out of the question for obvious reasons, but so are our numeral systems. Though the concept of numbers is nearly universal, the way we depict them as numerals is entirely arbitrary. This is why many attempts, including the Beacon in the Galaxy, opt to design their letters as a bitmap, a way to use binary code to create a pixelated image. The bitmap design philosophy for interstellar communication stretches back to the Arecibo Message. It is a logical approach. The on and off, present, absent nature of a binary system seems like it would be recognized by any intelligent species. But the strategy is not without its shortcomings. When pioneering search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, scientist Frank Drake designed a prototype of the Arecibo Message. He sent the binary message by post to some colleagues, including several Nobel laureates. None of them were able to understand its contents, and only one figured out that the binary was meant to be a bitmap. If some of the smartest humans struggle to understand this form of encoding a message, it seems unlikely that an extraterrestrial would fare any better. Furthermore, it is not even clear that space aliens will be able to see the images contained within the messages if they do receive it. One of the key ideas is that because vision has evolved independently many times on Earth, that means aliens will have it too. Says Douglas Vakoch, president of METI, Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence International, a nonprofit devoted to researching how to communicate with other life forms. But that's a big if. And even if they can see it, there's so much culture embedded in the way we represent objects. Does that mean we should rule out pictures? Absolutely not. It means we should not naively assume that our representations are going to be intelligible.
Take it away, Jason. This is
my bag here. Yeah. I know. I when Timothy was reading that, the idea about giving a return address, I'm like, oh fuck, we're putting out there, ways to get back to this planet. If we do contact somebody that might be some sort of like, again, I think just like, in the ocean, the big fish eat the smaller fish, right? And we've got this, or as humans here, we've kind of have this little bit of hubris thinking, oh, there's no greater intelligence out there. We're at the pinnacle, because obviously we know physics and everything. So an extraterrestrial race is going to know physics. I'm like, fuck, if we're beaming out a location of how to get here, it's like, we're watching Dune last night, and the thumper is like making a rhythmic sound in the sand to attract a sandworm. It's the same kind of thing. I'd imagine if there were bigger fish out there in the universe, in the solar system, or in the galaxy, or in the universe, if we start putting out a signal that is obviously not created by something natural, something that's created by a life form, that's going to send out a pattern distinctly out there into space that's going to attract something that knows what to look for. Just like when a fisherman casts a line out there and there's a little bit of bait, the fish are going to smell and perceive that bait that's in the water and start coming to that bait. So I'm not saying that there might not be other entities out there in the universe that are benevolent, but I'd imagine just this idea of trying to, these people who've got this really kind of bleeding heart mentality about going out there and communicating with ET, the friendly,
It's so dangerous. I'm totally down with that. That, this all comes out of that hippie mentality of the 60s, like, we are all one, and all these new age fuckheads, and they're all like, we must reach the space brothers and all this.
Yeah.
And they have come to, SETI did come to this conclusion, but because of all these hippies at Berkeley and Stanford and MIT, it took years. But it was like the Russians were warning years back, you shouldn't be sending a beacon out in space.
Right. If anything, we should be trying to figure out a way to shield
what's out there. And the chance that they can pick it up soon, they're way more. And I look at Uma Scout. If that thing has picked, that was kind to have a like sneaky pick look at us, and I tell you again that I've been having these I don't know, insights, noetics, I don't know, but I'm constantly looking at the sky every night now, and I keep thinking there's something, what's ever wrong with the world now, or what's ever going on in the world now, it's up there. I don't know what. Yep. I can't explain what. Don't ask me. I haven't got a clue, but I do feel it.
And all these asteroids that they're seeing, sometimes it makes me, are they asteroids, or and here I'm going to go. Are they ships? Are they some sort of scout ship or some sort of scout technology? Even if they're not purely physical, if there's some sort of semi-physical, semi-solid, semi-ethereal technology out there, I wonder about that when something passes by, because we're having one. And it's like, I've almost wanted to throw a few of them in the show, but it's like we literally get like maybe 2 stories like that every week about an asteroid that's the size of a Volkswagen bus, the size of the Eiffel Tower, or the size of something is coming by. It's like we see that now. It's like all the time. And from the beginning, when I started making the Rona Chronicles, I kept thinking there's something to do with space. Is it a cover story for an asteroid? Is the needle craft the actual alien invasion? As someone, one of our mutual friends, Stephen, says today, putting baby Cthulhu's into people, you wonder all these things, Right. And just this idea too, that like you were talking about the kind of psyop out there of the space brothers and all the channeled Pleiadian messages that people do that are about laying down your weapons and stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa, that could be a message coming from an ET or something saying, yeah, put all your weapons down. Yeah. Get rid of all that stuff. And, don't, all that kind of thing. Like it's like, okay, so if a cat has claws and a dog has teeth, it's like us as humans, we've got our intellect and we've got the technology that we can create. And the idea of putting all that down, it's like, that's the idea of laying your defenses down. What kind of message is that to lay your defenses down? I mean, yeah, to me that sounds like, again, I've used this terminology before, but if there were some sort of interdimensional body snatchers type entities coming into this universe and taking over, we wouldn't have an initial invasion. The initial invasion wouldn't come until the first scouts had already showed up, and the first plants within the society would show up. You would never send in like the Marines first. You always have to send in scout troops. You send in parties of one, parties of two over, and they're deep undercover, and gathering intel on how their target works. That's the way you do an invasion. You have to gather up information first, gather up the intel, send it back. Send in scouts to do all that stuff, and we might have been seeing that over the 19th, 20th, and 21st century, seeing little bits of that. Preparing. Just kind of like we talk about War of the Worlds type of thing. That this is a game of chess, not a game of checkers. These moves, a game of chess, and on this level probably lasts 3 generations before the next move is made. I don't want to say. So yeah,
you look at all the British sci-fi movies and even American sci-fi movies. They were very wary of attack from outer space until the hippies came along, and suddenly there was hot chicks in outer space and hippie philosophy in outer space. And I'm not saying I couldn't be there. Right. But that's where the whole SETI thing was born.
They probably all got killed.
Yeah, exactly. The whole SETI thing is born out of hippie idealism at Berkeley and MIT and places like that.
Yeah. If there was some tremendously, beautiful, poetic civilization out there in the universe that lived in harmony with nature and had no wars and all that, the poor fuckers probably got themselves eaten up by some kind of, gigantic interplanetary like I said, I'll just call it a big fish, to use that analogy, like, the big fish eat the small fish. And it's like it doesn't matter how spiritual you go, it's just like all those fuckers who are praying when some kind of entity's in front of them. It's like, no, it doesn't matter how much you put yourself in the state of love when there's something in front of you, no, it doesn't matter how lovely you are. You're still going to get consumed by that thing. So yeah, but this is interesting, though, this story and kind of going along with a common thread between all these stories we have today. But no, I think if anything, if we've got the United States has a space force now, and I would wonder if it would behoove us to start shielding some of the signals that this planet is putting off, because we're tremendously noisy now. Going back to a Dune reference now, or even a Tremors reference from other worms underground, to use something terrestrial. If we're putting all that noise out there into our solar system, we're being very noisy over here. So maybe it would behoove us to get some kind of noise canceling type, create anti-waves going the opposite direction. The way you can cancel out a sine wave by putting a sine wave in the equal amplitude in an inverse phase, right? And that's how you cancel signal. If you have a sine wave at 60 hertz at 3 decibels, you create one out of phase at 60 hertz and 3 decibels, and it'll cancel the other one out.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, I don't think we should be sending return.
Aliens haven't heard Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar from The View yet, because they would wipe us out.
Right. Well, that's why our psyches are louder than theirs. Our thoughts are loud. As magicians, as people, like as artists, we have very loud psychic voices. So yeah, they probably hear you first before any of them.
Hopefully.
All right, here we go. Scientists say that dark matter may be information itself. There's no shortage of debate about the nature of dark matter, a mysterious substance that many physicists believe makes up a large portion of the total mass of the universe, in spite of never having observed it directly. Now, a physicist from the UK named Melvin Vopson is raising a startling possibility that dark matter might be information itself. He even claims that information could be the elusive dark matter that makes up almost a third of the universe. If we assume that information is physical and has mass, and that elementary particles have a DNA of information about themselves, how could we prove it? My latest paper is about putting these theories to the test so they can be taken seriously by the scientific community. The paper, published in the journal AIP Advances, suggests an experiment that could test the hypothesis that information is a distinct state of matter, alongside solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas, by using a particle antiparticle collision in theory to erase information from the universe. We know that when you collide a particle of matter with a particle of antimatter, they annihilate each other, and and the information from the particle has to go somewhere when it's annihilated. There are countless theories about dark matter, including it's worth pointing out that it doesn't exist at all. So while Vopson's idea is provocative, it's best to withhold judgment until he actually manages to test his hypothesis. But for what it's worth, he seems pretty compelled by the concept. It doesn't contradict quantum mechanics, electrodynamics, thermodynamics, or classical mechanics, he said in the release. All it does is complement physics with something new and incredibly exciting.
Oops. Hold on. There we go. Yeah. Again, more model stuff. And this one actually reminds me, it's very kind of Pete Carroll with the way he explains when you look into cyber magic and he talks about bosons and other, and his quantum. I really do like Pete Carroll's take on quantum mechanics and its connection with magic, with the ability to, I'm not going to try to sum up Pete Carroll. I would fuck it up really bad, but Thomas, you might be able to take this one.
In my own book, Sorcery, I've been postulating there for a long time that whatever dark matter energy is, and bear in mind, that's just a name they've given it. Whatever that force is, it is the buffering force between intention and outcome in magic. So if you have your will here saying, I will this to happen, and you compress it, the dark matter energy is the buffering force between both, and it causes a shunting effect and brings it into manifestation or whatever this way. And that's people say, well, how can, okay, I understand that will can create changes in the material world, but what is the intermediate force? I believe it's that dark matter energy.
Absolutely.
And what made make me believe that is the same reason why it was discovered, that there wasn't enough gravity inside a spiral galaxy to hold a spiral galaxy together. So there had to have been some other medium force in there. And that's where dark matter energy came from, the theory anyway. But remember, people, I have talked to people and they say, yeah, but it's only, just remember, that's a name. That's just a name. Our ancestors called it the ether or whatever, or Maya, as the Hindus call it. But that is the buffering medium and the shunting medium between intention, will, and outcome.
Right. It's the quanta of will. It's condensed, or it's like you're saying, the shunting effect. It's the clay that the fabric of reality is molded out of, or I'm using really bad analogies right now.
Like those one punch, that like the finger
1-inch punch
that like, and the finger comes this close to the solar plexus and the guy flies back. Well, that's theory. That's what that is. That it's the same force that a mother, when she's picking the car up off her child who's trapped underneath after an accident, that's what that is.
Yep. Ki, prana, chi, pneuma, whatever you want to call it, theta, anything. It's been measured by many people, and if some people have been fascinated by this and have gone, created entire bits of philosophy on it, But our old friend Frater H with Jack Parsons back in the day was fascinated by this and based all of his technology off of it. But no, I really do think that there's something to this. It's just that the idea that it's antimatter and that it doesn't exist. It's like, well, that'll be the one thing I say. No, it exists. It's just not. It's not what the models that have put it out there to be, that it somehow doesn't exist. No, it absolutely exists, and we just call it dark matter. But you can go around and, it's what charge, we were talking about charge earlier. It's like we're moving those particles around or whatever it is. We're moving this quanta around and creating a capacitance within, the first story, within that doll.
It also appears to be an intelligent force, because not only is it working with us to get our outcome through our will and intention, but it also seems to want to defy explanation, that the closer that science gets to putting a grasp on it, it then moves into something else. It has its own... It has its own intelligence. And, people say, well, dark matter just started. Maybe, and I say, you have to think of it as maybe that's God. Maybe that's what the Christians and the Abrahamics mean by God. Maybe that's it. Yeah. It's intelligence, unseen force out in the universe, holding it together, basically.
Yep. The one thing that they get wrong, though, the monotheists get, is that they somehow attribute that everything is the result of it pushing on us, rather than the way a magician would look at it. A magician is pushing on God, so to speak, to mock up our will. where it's like someone who's looking at it from an Abrahamic or from a monotheistic way, that template of intelligence out there is somehow controlling your life. Well, yeah, if you're not pushing up against it and molding it yourself, then very much you're at effect to it. But as a magician or as an artist, you're at cause to it, because you're going out there and actually molding that clay again, or taking that fabric of reality and shaping something out of it, creating a piece of clothing out of that fabric of reality. And it's possible.
I think the Abrahamics, the one that isn't like that would be the Kabbalists and the.
You're right. I was just going to say something about it. Yeah.
And the whole concept of the Tetragrammaton and this kind of that it's a nameless force that should not be even mentioned. And I think that those rabbis back in the Middle Ages even stumbled upon the idea as well, that like, okay, it's we can control this thing as much as it controls us. Right.
Yeah, a Kabbalist that I'm somewhat acquainted with told me a couple of years ago, sometime around 2016, that concept that, the will of God is the destruction of all things in the universe, and we're up against that. That as soon as you go along with the will of God, you're on the side of the unmocking of reality. Just like there's forces that come around in the autumn that decay all the old leaves and stuff that's fallen off the trees and the old harvests to make it recyclable for the new, seeds to be sown once springtime comes around. And it's this, again, natural philosophy. I've heard it before that, like in life, you talked about polarity earlier, Thomas, like there's the idea that, in polarity, you could either be on the side of creating a new future or on the side of destroying the old paradigm, and both are necessary. And sometimes people are born with their dharma. They're here to break down the old paradigm, and some people are here to create the new paradigm. And I'd imagine there's a give and take, obviously, because everything is a balance. But it's like, those two archetypes can be, you see it around us all the time, with counterculture. Sometimes counterculture is about the destruction of an old way, and sometimes counterculture is about creating a new way. And I would want to say that that's what today's, this moment in time is about. The counterculture that's emerging now is creating a new reality, creating a new way of doing things, not in a rebellious way from what I want to say circa 1960 to maybe 2015 or 2004, 2008, somewhere around there. The idea of rebelling against, what people still think there's this tremendously conservative culture that everyone's rebelling against. Now it's like, no, that game's been played and the pendulum has swung in the other direction now. I'm not saying that we need to go in a conservative direction, but I'm saying that kind of classical liberal sense of sticking it to the man, we need the man back again. We're still trying to live life as it's 1960 again. But but just that idea of, this next counterculture is about creating a new way of doing things. And I've said that a number of times today, that this next renaissance that Thomas has talked about, whether it's 2033 or that's when we start seeing bits of it, it's a new way of doing things, a new way of looking at life. Or maybe a return to natural philosophy again, as you mentioned a number of times, Thomas.
Totally agree. That seems to be the theme tonight's show, is the return to natural philosophy.
I love it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the comments in this one. Sometimes we have shows where I'm really, really, really excited to hear what people's feedback is on things. And I think tonight's going to be a great one, especially with what we talked about Kundalini experiences earlier, and we've talked about quantum mechanics. I'm sure we're going to piss off a lot of scientism types with this one, and there's going to be people leaving comments trying to cite different papers and things, but we'll let them do that, have their fun.
Yeah.
Well, we made it almost to 2 full hours.
Wow.
That one flew by.
Fast hours. That flew.
Yep. Well, thank you guys both for your brilliant insights as always. And people over there in the comments, you guys had some really good things to offer up too. And yeah, that 2 hours went by real fast. And that's a wrap on number 38. All right, you guys, we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
I love it.